Hey guys, there's been a few updated requests for a CH tutorial on getting your CH gear up and working in Arena Commander. So I thought I'd just do a relatively quick tutorial showing you kind of how I set up my gear and map it in Star Citizen. This isn't meant to be anything comprehensive. I'm not going to show you how to do anything fancy with CH Products HOTAS system. I'm just going to give you a basic rundown on how to get it up, mapped, and working in Arena Commander. As always, the heart of your CH gear is your CH control manager. The first thing you're going to want to do if you haven't done it yet is click on this test calibrate button here and calibrate your system. If you're seeing something weird here, something that, for example, just says CH control manager device 1 or whatever, just hit rescan and that'll rescan all your devices. And then you click on the device you want to calibrate, hit OK, and go through the calibration routine. I'm not going to do it here because it takes a couple of minutes, but what that'll do is that'll get all your devices back to a good neutral area where you're not going to get any weird drifting or anything like that. One thing I want to point out is the way I map my gear is I do as much as possible through the control manager. So for example, I don't go through the keybinds in the program itself, like for example in Star Citizen, and reset, all the different controls I want for different things in Star Citizen. I do all that through the control manager. And there's two reasons I do that. The first is doing it through the control manager, I find for me personally, it helps me maintain more parity between the different games I play. So right now, for example, I play Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, and Free Space fairly regularly. And my control setups for the three games are as close as I can make it on my CH gear, because that keeps me from getting confused, if I'm switching between the different games. And I just find it's easier to do that using the control manager rather than trying to do it within the game mapping itself. The other reason, especially with Star Citizen, is the fact that, quite frankly, that crap keeps changing. It's expected, the game's in alpha, it's in development, those things are going to change. But it keeps changing. Occasionally you have to, excuse me, occasionally you have to blow away your user folder or your install gets corrupted or something. And it's just a lot easier if you can just open your CH map, apply it to your stick, and you're done. And you don't really have to worry about changing it. The only time you have to mess with stuff is if they start to mess with the actual default keybinds in the game. So with that in mind, the method I use is I open the Star Citizen default keyboard map here, and this is what I use to apply to my sticks. The way I did it is I have a graphic here with the throttle. I have a blank copy of this. I'll provide the links on where to download it. And I just filled in basically what I wanted each of the things to do. So I went through here and said, okay, so toggle caps toggles your IFAS safeties. Well, I want to map that to my pinky button here. So I just added it into this chart here. And you can print this out and do it on paper if you want. The reason I do this is because when it comes time to actually map it in the CH in the CH control manager, I've actually got this in front of me. So I find it just makes it easier if I make that map to follow. Your mileage may vary, but I find that works for me. So the first thing you're going to want to do is start a new map. So go to Map Wizard. And it says first step in creating a map is to select the devices you have. All right, so I have a fighter stick, a Pro Throttle, and Pro Pedals. I know quite a few people don't have the pedals yet. Even though I'm going to add them to my map, I'll show you how to map roll using the mini stick on the throttle instead of using the pedals. But for now I have them, so I'm just going to put them in there. So hit OK. And it says the control manager has the ability to combine multiple devices into a single Windows joystick one. Excited. Do you want to do this? Yes, we absolutely want to do this. In earlier versions of Star Citizen, it wouldn't even read multiple devices. Sometimes the order that the game interprets the devices isn't the same as the way Windows does. Excuse me, and considering we can assign it to different logical devices anyway, for our purposes, there's no real reason to click no. So we're absolutely going to click yes here. And the default is 8 axes and 32 buttons. If you know with the pedals, you might not have 8 axes, you might only have 6. But that's fine. You can just leave that on the defaults, hit OK. And this one here basically says, do you want to include CMS capability? For a straightforward basic map, it's not necessary. So you can hit no and click finish. All right, so this starts you with a basic control map. What we're going to do is we're going to map most of our buttons in mapped mode. By default, for example, if I just click a random button here, they're in DirectX mode. We're going to do it in mapped mode, but we're going to do it on a button by button basis. So the first thing we're going to do is our axes. So if I move the stick forward and back, that's our y-axis, which is fine. Left and right is our x-axis. So by default in Star Citizen, your x-axis is actually mapped to roll instead of yaw. So if you want yaw on your stick instead of roll, you're actually going to change this to the r-axis. That's the way I prefer it. I like to have it on the r-axis because yaw and pitch are your two primary directional controls in Star Citizen. I'm of the chain of thought that you put your primary directional controls on your stick. So on your pedals, which by default are the r-axis, you're going to change that over to X, and that puts roll on your pedals. The second thing we're going to do, if you have your throttle and you have a thumbstick here, by default it's not in DirectX mode, it's in mapped mode. If we want that on an analog axis, we're going to put that back into DirectX mode, and under here it's going to say DX device. We want CM device 2. In theory, you could do it on device 1. I put it on device 2 because it just helps keep things straight in my head. And then you're going to go DirectX axes. So make sure if you move the stick up and down or left and right. So right now I'm moving it up and down. So you can see here it highlights the Y. I'm putting it on CM device 2, Y axes. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing for X. So I move it forward and back. It goes to my X axis. I'm going to put it back in DirectX mode, CM device 2, X axes. Now, this is the one thing you will have to change in the game, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So once you've changed your axes setups here, the next part basically comes to just mapping your buttons. So like I said, so the way I do it is I look at what I've decided to map these to. So for example, I got the little pinky switch on the back of the throttle mapped to boost brake. Brake is when I use the shift function. I'll explain that in a second. So map it to boost. And we know by looking at our keyboard map here, boost is the left shift key. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap that little button, and it's going to bring us up to the window where it's got the arrow pointing at it there. We're going to take it out of DirectX mode, which puts it back into mapped mode, and it says normal action. Well, our normal action is we want it left shift. So you're going to right click, go record keystrokes, hit your left shift, hit exit. So that's press left shift. Great, so that means that button is now mapped to boost. All right, I said I'd explain the shifting function because the other one I had it mapped to, according to my little chart here, was brake. In CH gear, you can actually map two functions to the same button. So what happens here, I'm going to highlight this little button here on the far side of the stick. So that's the one that's activated either with my pinky finger, the one beside my pinky finger, and I have it here. It shows that's my shift button. We're just going to click shift on that, and it really doesn't matter whether you have it in DirectX mode or mapped mode. I take it out of DirectX mode for that and just put it in mapped mode. So that shift, leave the rest of it blank. We go back to this button, and we go shifted action. Again, we have to go record keystrokes, and we hit the space bar and hit exit. So basically what that means is this button acts as a shift key. So if I just hold down or tap this button here, it acts as my booster, whereas if I hold down the shift button and tap this button over here, while holding down my shift, it actually acts as my space brake. As you can see, a few places in here, I've actually done that. So this little quadrant of hat switch here, I've mapped to my shield control, with the last one being rear shields by default, and then equal shields for my shifted function. So just to show you kind of how I did that here, I'm going to go ahead and map that one as well. So that's this hat switch here. And you can see again here when you hit the different buttons on the hatch switch, which exact direction you're addressing there. And if we go back to our diagram, we see our shields are assigned using our number pad buttons here, with 5 as equalize shields. So I'm going to start with the button here on that points to the right, and I'm going to make that my forward shields. So again, I'm going to go into mapped mode, normal action, go record keystrokes, and hit the numpad A key for forward shields and hit exit. And the reason I do record keystrokes instead of just typing the key, so if I just type the key, it interprets it as the numeral 8. That's actually different than keypad 8. Just the numeral 8 refers to the numbers across the top of your keyboard, whereas KP8 refers to keypad 8. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to do the same thing with all these, with the rest of them. So record keystrokes. This one here is going to be my right shields. So it's going to be my left shields. And this one is going to be my aft shields. With the shifted function for that button is going to be equalizing my shields. So I can assign my shields to the different quadrants, and if I hold down the shift key and hit that directional button on the hat there, that will equalize my shields. According to my map down here, I did the same thing with the power groups on this button down here, except this one here, because there's only the 3 and then equal power. We don't need any shifted function, but I can do the same thing here. And since these are numbers, you don't need to do record keystrokes here. You can just type these ones straight in. And you can do that for any of your normal letter keys on the keyboard as well. And again, I'm getting all these numbers or all these keystrokes here. I'm typing it. Whoops, messed that up. There we go. That I'm typing in. It's just straight from the keyboard map. I'm just literally just directly mapping my keystrokes to buttons on the HOTAS. I'm not going to go through my entire key mapping because it's quite extensive. I will pull up the one I did for Star System. Yeah, it's my Star System one. So you can see here how I've also assigned a whole bunch onto my stick. And these ones here, I do have shifted functions on most of these. Now, these are direct letters for the keyboard. So on those ones, again, let me just hit the letters on the stick. You can just take them out of mapped mode and press whatever the corresponding number is. So I think on my chart there, I said up was, target ship and reticle, which, sorry, I thought that function existed. It actually didn't. So we're just going to go nearest hostile to the right. That was a carryover from my free space map, that one there. So nearest hostile, we go down here. Nearest hostile is C. So we can just type the letter C in there. And you can go through your entire map and basically assign any of your buttons directly to keystrokes any way you want to do it. The only other button that we need to do some finicky stuff with is whichever one you want to use to fire missiles. By default, this button up here, right here, is your secondary fire button. Your trigger is, of course, your primary fire. I've mapped missiles to this little pinky button down here. Now, by default, missiles are with the mouse wheel. So what we're going to do here is, if you want to map that using the control manager, is we're going to take the DirectX device and we're going to change it to mouse, and we're going to take the control is going to be button 3. The scroll wheel click on a mouse on pretty much every mouse I've ever seen is button 3. So if we do that and you press your pinky button there, the game's just going to interpret it as if you click the mouse button for firing missiles. Another combination I want to point out here is, personally, again, I assigned eject as this button up here. And to do that, because eject, again, we look at our chart here, it's the right Alt key and L. We go normal action, record keystrokes, Alt L, let it off, and exit. And that puts Alt L in there. The other thing I discovered, and this seems to be an issue with Star Citizen, and it only started doing it in in Arena Commander 1. Caps lock by default is your toggle decouple. On mine, I set that to my center of my 3 buttons on my throttle. Now, to toggle this, the way I wanted it is so that I'm only decoupled while I'm holding the button down. So the way I originally had it mapped in Arena Commander version 8 and all of version 9 was you press it and it taps caps to go out of decoupled mode, and then release, sorry, it's the wrong button. Sorry, and then when you release it, so you press, hold down, it presses caps lock. You release it, it presses caps lock again. For some strange reason, in Arena Commander 1, this seems to give me actually as if I tapped caps lock anywhere between 1 and 3 times. And I'm assuming that has something to do with my repeat count set up in Control Manager and the way Star Citizen is interpreting it. But like I said, there seems to be a problem with Star Citizen as opposed to the CH stuff itself. Either way, I found it works when I just have press caps. So in that way, if you hold down that button, you're decoupled, and as soon as you release it, you're back into coupled mode. Again, that's the way I like to fly. You can play with your map and decide how you want it. I really encourage you, especially if you have a printer, it actually makes this real easy. Once you get your basic map down, print this thing out, keep it on you, go in the game, mess around for a while, and then pencil in where you want the different controls, and then come back into your Control Manager and mess with it. Excuse me. And change it up. One of the beauties of a HOTAS system is that it is infinitely customizable. I think on the CH system alone, just between the throttle and the joystick, you can map over 200 functions to it. So don't be afraid to mess with your maps. Don't be afraid to change them, play with them. Decide how you like them and how you want them mapped up. Because there's a lot of people that kind of don't touch the control software. Frankly, I think that's kind of sad because it makes it real easy to really change up your different control settings and really customize it the way you want. Anyway, so the last thing you're going to want to do here, obviously save your control map. I'm going to save mine under demo here. And sorry, that was the second last. And the very last thing, there's this little icon here called download. You want to make sure you hit that. If you don't, you basically haven't mapped your joystick and you haven't downloaded the map to the stick, so it won't work. So for me, I'm just going to load up the one I had in here. In here you can see kind of I've done more fleshed out key maps for all the different things. And same on this stick. Oh, sorry, so mine here on shift, I did actually just leave it in DirectX mode, so it didn't really matter there. So I'm going to download mine. Alright, I'm just going to load up the game now and kind of give you a quick overview or demonstration of just one of the 2 things you need to make sure of in the game, and hopefully that'll get you up and running. Okay, so we're in the game now. The only thing you should have to do in this game, or sorry, in the control maps for the game now, is just make sure the axes mapped properly. So for there, you're just going to go into Options, Controls, kick this over to, key binding, my bad. Kick this over to Joystick, hit Advanced Control Customization. And the few you're going to want to look at here, and this really scrolls horribly. Alright, so your normal flight movement. Basically, you're just confirming that the axes on your stick correspond with the axes in the game. So pitch, y-axis, yes, that's what we want. Yaw, z-axis, rotation. Again, remember we changed our axes, our left-right axes on the stick from X to Z. So that's what it means by z-axis rotation. If you want to confirm that, all you have to do is just click it to select, double-click to rebind, move your stick to the left, and there, confirmed. That is, in fact, the axes we want. Good. So we move down, roll x-axis. Okay, so here's where if you have pedals or you're planning on using the little micro stick on the throttle for roll, you're going to want to make sure these are bound correctly. So again, it's the same method here. All you need to do is just double click on it. So for example, for my pedals, because I changed my pedals to the x-axis, I double click on it, it's waiting for input. I just move a pedal, I've just shoved one forward, there we go. It's bound to my x-axis for roll. Now, if I'm using the micro stick instead, it's the exact same process. Just double click, waiting for axis input, y-axis input 2. So input 2 is just referring to device number 2. Because if you remember, we changed our micro stick to CM device 2. So that's all that means. So whether you're using pedals or micro stick for roll, that's how you do it. And then same thing again, like, you know, if you're one of those people who prefers roll on the stick as opposed to yaw, same process. Again, all we're doing here is just confirming that the axes we set up in the control manager are properly mapped to the game. So for my sake, I'm just going to put that back on my pedals. All right, and we're still going to go down. You can check throttle axes. I've never had an issue with that one being mapped properly. These are the other ones. If you have pedals and or you're using your micro stick for your horizontal and vertical translation, again, same process. Just want to make sure it maps to the correct axis. So strafe up, down, y-axis input 2. We just want to confirm. I'm just going to double click. Y-axis input 2. I just moved my micro stick all the way up. Excuse me. And then same thing for strafe left, right. Leave all these ones here for strafe left, strafe right. Leave them all blank because we're using analog axes for this. So the only other one I want to make sure this mapped to properly is decoupled strafe. Sometimes I find that in decoupled mode, it actually reverses the axes. It doesn't even map these, and decoupled yaw actually reverses. So if yaw is mapped by default to my y-axis, it'll be z-axis rotation here, vice versa. That's been an issue since we've been able to map decoupled yaw. So again, my recommendation here, just make sure your decoupled yaw is mapped to the same thing as your normal yaw, whatever you happen to make that. And that should be all the control mappings you have to check here. If you want, you can save that. Star Citizen seems to remember most of them now, but you know, feel free to just export that anyway if you want. Let's go back to game, and there we go. We got our controls mapped for our stick. Pedals are mapped to roll. And again, if you set the micro stick to roll instead, you'd just be moving your micro stick instead of your pedals to roll. In this case, I've got my micro stick set for my horizontal and vertical translation. Oh, looks like I might have actually screwed this map there. One thing I did notice that happens sometimes with the micro stick is it actually reverses the axes on them. So for example, when I came in here originally, and I pressed the up on my micro stick, it actually moved me downward. Easiest way to fix that is just go back to your control manager. On your micro stick, you'll notice on mine, I have the axis set to reverse. And that just fixes that when, for some reason, the axis was reversed in the game. Again, that seems to be an issue with Star Citizen. It's the only thing I have an issue with it in, but no big deal. And again, this is another reason why I like using the control manager, because it just makes it so easy to change those things. Another consideration with the micro stick is I put a small dead zone in it, just because I found that it doesn't necessarily zero properly even after calibration. And considering there's a bug in the game that it treats this binary input right now anyway, it doesn't really matter. So you might want to consider just putting a bit of a dead zone in there. Oops, there we go. And throttle should map fine. And then you can see we still have the functionality of our other keys. So if we go throttle up, boost, and that's just using the button on the throttle quadrant. Or you can space brake. We go into decoupled, hold down our shift key and our boost. Space brake. So for decoupled mode, again, all I'm doing, according to the map that I did and I showed in the video, I just hold down that button and my ship's in decoupled mode. Yay, let go of the button and I'm back in coupled mode. I also mapped other things. So for example, See if our shields work here. Oh, there's our power. You can see the power moving around in the HUD there. Shield mapping works.
Shields charging.
So again, we use the shift key and our rear shield button to center shields. Or sorry, to equalize our shield output. Yeah, so that's about it. Weapons seem to work. No, secondary fire doesn't seem to work. I've been having some issues with firing, but oh wait, I'm also probably a civilian Hornet, so I do. Okay, I don't have them. That's why it's not working. Too used to flying the military Hornet. Yes, our fireworks. Yeah, so that's just really basic, guys, how to get your equipment up and running. I know this tutorial wasn't as probably clear or as in-depth as my other ones. If you have any issues or any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments here or hit me up on Reddit. And, you know, hopefully we'll be dogfighting with you with your CH gear. Cheers.